Okay, so my presentation is over Plato and Aristotle and how they contributed to mathematics. Okay, so first we're going to talk about Plato. I just want to give a little bit of background for him. To the right is a picture of a statue of what he would have looked like back then. He was born in 427 BC in Athens, Greece, and then he also died in 347 BC in Athens, Greece. His parents were named Aristone and Pryxione. He was the youngest son, but his father died and his mother remarried when he was a young adult. I also just want to point out that from the sources I used, they stated that details about Plato may be slightly inaccurate because we don't really know for sure who wrote about Plato and his background. It may have been him himself, or it may have been somebody else who knew him. And then just a fun little fact, it was claimed that Plato was just a nickname given to him because he had broad shoulders. And he was also one of the most important Greek philosophers. Okay, just a little bit about Plato's early life. He served in the military from 409 to 404 BC in the Peloponnesian War, which occurred from 431 BC to 404 BC. He ended his military career because he wanted to start a political one right after he stopped serving in 404 BC. That's when he joined the oligarchy of the 30 tyrants in Athens. But he left the 30 tyrants in Athens shortly after joining because he disagreed with their violent acts. He then ended his political career in 399 BC, which was right when Socrates was executed. He joined the military again for another period of war, but then he ended his military career then. He traveled to Italy, Egypt, and Sicily. In Egypt, he learned about the water clock, and in Sicily, he learned about the work of Pythagoras, which he later put into his work in the academy, which I will mention later. This is just a map of Athens, Greece at the time of the Peloponnesian War, which started at 431 BC. Okay, so I don't know if you can see at the bottom left what everything stands for, but basically the yellow stands for Athens and its allies. The purple represents the Persian Empire at the time. The pink part represents Sparta and the Peloponnesian League. And then the light orange colored part represents the Kingdom of Macedonia, which will be important later in this presentation. There's also some light orange star-like asterisk symbols that represent Athenian victories, which are around Pylos and near the islands near Persia. And then there's also some pink star-like asterisks, which represent Peloponnesian victories. There's some around Athens and also around Macedonia. And yeah, this is just a map of Athens, Greece around the time that the war had started and the time that Plato was alive. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about Plato's mathematical contributions. He founded the Academy in 387 BC in Athens, Greece. It was an institution devoted to research and instruction in philosophy and the sciences. He never actually made any mathematical discoveries himself, but he was very important to the development of mathematics. And then the picture on this slide is an archaeological site at the Academy. It's no longer a building anymore. Today, just the site is used as a public park. Another one of his mathematical contributions is his theory of forms, which he considered mathematical objects as perfect forms. And then just using one of his mathematical examples about a line, He said that a line is an object with length but not width. If we make a line, it will never be in the original perfect mathematical form because it will always have width. And then just to further explain his theory of forms, I want to mention two of his books. One was called Phaedo. He talked about objects in the real world trying to be like their perfect forms, and he keeps on mentioning thinner and thinner lines, never really reaching the true mathematical concept of a line. And then in his other book called Republic, he talks about geometrical diagrams that are imperfect imitations of the perfect mathematical objects that they represent. And this is just like a little bit of a basic information about his theory of forms. And then he also had several other mathematical contributions and also philosophical ideas. He discussed a lot of ethics and metaphysics, including immortality, man, mind, and realism. He also liked to focus on mathematical philosophy, political and religious philosophy. He concentrated on the idea of a proof and insisted on using accurate definitions and hypotheses to make these proofs. And then his ideas of proofs then laid the foundations for Euclid's systematic approach to mathematics, which was developed later. And then the picture to the right represents a dodecahedron, which was Plato's model for the universe at the time. And I just wanted to add that there as just like a fun fact about what he thought the universe had looked like. Okay, now we are going to talk about Aristotle. The picture on the right is a statue of what he would have looked like at the time. He was born in 384 BC in Stagirus, Macedonia, Greece, which, if you look up a map of it, was on the Chalkidiki Peninsula of northern Greece. He died in 322 BC in Chalcis, Evea, Greece. His parents were named Nicomachus and Festis. They both unfortunately died when he was young, and he was raised by his uncle, whose name was Proxenus of Aternus. His uncle taught him Greek, rhetoric, and poetry, and his father taught him the sciences. His father was a medical doctor, and he hoped that he could pass his profession down to Aristotle, which didn't actually ever really happen. Later in life, he married a woman named Pythias, and he had one daughter also named after his wife. His wife was the niece of Hermias, who was a ruler in Assos, which he does travel to later. But his wife died 10 years after their marriage. After his wife died, he had a girlfriend named Hercules, and they had one son together named after his father, Nicomachus. Okay, just a little bit of insight about Aristotle's early life. In 367 BC, he joined Plato's academy at the age of 17. The academy at the time had been operating for about 20 years when he joined. He actually taught at the academy for 20 years after he graduated, but then he left. It's unknown what reasons he left the academy for, but there are just few possibilities that historians have mentioned. Plato died in 347 BC, and at the time, some historians think that Aristotle wanted to become the head of the academy, but he was not selected and somebody else was. I believe his name was Speusippus. And so some people think he was mad that he didn't become the head leader of the academy. And they also think that he might not have liked the leader. But there are also some political reasons that were happening at the time. At the time, Amyntas was the king of Macedonia, and he died. His two sons reigned, but they didn't last long. And then his third son, Philip, took over. And actually, when Philip and Aristotle were younger, they knew each other as kids. And historians think that something happened maybe during the war and just the expansion of the Kingdom of Macedonia that made Aristotle leave. And just a little bit of his early life continued. He traveled to Assos, like I mentioned earlier, where he met Pythias, his wife. He joined a group of philosophers that collected observations relating to zoology and biology. And then later, after living there for a while, the Persians attacked Assos and he fled to Lesbos, which was an island like right near Assos. And that's actually, he stayed there for a year to do some more research and observations on zoology and biology related topics. And then he moved back to Macedonia, and then later he moved back to his birthplace after another war started. And then in 335 BC, he founded his own school, similar to the academy, called the Lyceum in Athens. And it was similar to the academy, but it focused on more broader subjects and just more like mathematical concepts and more the sciences. And then to the right, the picture is of the archaeological site of what Aristotle's Lyceum looks like now, today. Okay, this slide shows just a map of Macedonia, Greece at the time. It's around the time of Philip's death in 336 BC. And then just some few key important things about the map. The dark orange part is the Kingdom of Macedonia, and you can see that expanded from the last map. The Persian Empire is the purple, and it also expanded. And then there are also some red asterisk symbols representing important battles near Athens and a couple other places near there. And then this was like right around the time that Aristotle founded his Lyceum. Okay, now we're going to talk about Aristotle's mathematical contributions. Similar to Plato, he never actually made any mathematical discoveries himself, but he was very important, and his ideas were very important to the development of mathematics. So mainly he talked about logic, but he actually called it analytics at the time, and he claimed that it was not a science. One of his books was called Prior Analytics, and basically proposed a form of argument with two premises and a conclusion, which is now known as Aristotelian syllogistic. And then just like an example of what he was trying to say is that every Greek is a person, every person is immortal, therefore every Greek is immortal. But this is also what we use in mathematical logic and what we use to prove different concepts and theorems. Like, for example, if A belongs to every B and B belongs to every C, then A belongs to every C. And that's just one of the few examples of what he was trying to portray and what he thought about logic, or as he called it, analytics. And then he also had a couple of ideas about certain terms that we use today in mathematics. He had certain ideas about what continuous meant and represented and what infinite meant. He believed that the term continuous meant that it was not made of indivisible parts. It meant like the boundary or limit between two consecutive parts where they touch is one and the same. And then for infinite, he believed that this simply did not exist, but it only potentially, like it only possibly existed, depending on the circumstance. He was also interested in natural philosophy and physics, astronomy and chemistry. And so this presentation was just covering what Plato and Aristotle contributed to society with mathematics, and basically how, although they didn't have any mathematical discoveries themselves, how their ideas, their mathematical and philosophical ideas contributed to further mathematical discoveries like Euclid's systematic methods of math and other people's ideas. And this is my bibliography. Thank you.